Not every life unfolds the way we expect. Some paths quietly break away from what feels familiar, shaped by choices, circumstances, or differences that become impossible to ignore. The stories ahead aren't meant to shock, but to explore real people whose lives took unusually strange turns. This is what this video brings into focus: individuals who redefined normal simply by existing outside it. Some stories are curious, others unsettling, and one may leave you speechless. Stay with us until the end, because today's list reveals just how far human lives can drift from the ordinary. Number 15. Neil Harbison. At first, it's easy to assume Neil Harbison is simply interested in technology. Over time, you realize it goes much deeper than that. Born completely colorblind, Neil experiences the world in shades of gray. Instead of accepting that limitation, he chose to extend his senses by implanting an antenna into his skull that translates color into sound. This device allows him to hear colors as vibrations. Daily life changed dramatically. Music, art, and even faces became auditory experiences. Social interactions weren't always simple. People struggled to understand whether he was human, a machine, or something in between. Neil's response was steady confidence. He didn't see himself as broken or enhanced, just evolving. His calm acceptance reframes what it means to adapt. Neil's story gently reminds us that humans have always reshaped themselves to better understand the world, and that curiosity, not fear, often drives progress. Number 14. Moon Rebus. Some people feel connected to the world emotionally. Moon Rebus feels it physically. She implanted seismic sensors into her body that vibrate whenever earthquakes occur anywhere on Earth. What began as an artistic experiment slowly reshaped her sense of presence. Sudden vibrations interrupt conversations, meals, even sleep, reminding her that the planet is constantly in motion. Relationships required explanation and patience, especially when her body reacted to distant events no one else could feel. Moon chose not to filter or suppress the sensation. Instead, she embraced it as a form of awareness. Her mindset isn't about control, but listening. She speaks of the Earth not as an abstract concept, but as something she shares a rhythm with. Moon's story leaves a quiet thought behind. Most of us move through life disconnected from the forces around us, yet we're all shaped by them, whether we feel them or not. Number 13. Orlando Sorrell. Orlando Sorrell's life changed on an ordinary day that didn't seem important at the time. After being struck on the head by a baseball as a child, he gradually developed the ability to recall every day of his life in vivid detail. Dates, weather, conversations, all stored without effort. Daily life became mentally crowded as memories surfaced constantly without invitation. Conversations often drifted backward, anchored to exact moments others had long forgotten. Relationships could feel uneven, especially when others couldn't share the same recall. Orlando didn't chase attention or treat his memory as a gift. He learned to live quietly with it, developing routines to stay grounded in the present. His resilience comes from balance, not fascination. Orlando's experience reminds us that forgetting isn't always a flaw. Sometimes it's what allows us to move forward without carrying every moment with us. Number 12. Victoria Arlen. There was a time when Victoria Arlen could hear everything around her but couldn't respond in any way. After a sudden illness, she spent years in a locked-in state, fully conscious yet unable to move or speak. Daily life existed entirely inside her thoughts. Relationships continued one-sided, built on hope rather than feedback. Recovery came slowly and unpredictably, starting with small movements that reconnected her to the world. Learning to walk, speak, and trust her body again required patience and humility. Victoria met the process without resentment. She focused on progress, not comparison. Her mindset remained quietly determined rather than dramatic. What stays with her story is not survival alone, but perspective. She reminds us how much connection lives in simple acts, eye contact, conversation, movement, that most people never realize they're about to lose. Number 11. Michael Berryman. Michael Berryman grew up knowing that his appearance would shape first impressions long before words could. Born with hypohidrotic ectodermal dysplasia, his facial features develop differently, and his body doesn't regulate temperature normally. Childhood brought stares and questions that required early emotional strength. Daily life meant careful attention to heat and health, along with learning when to explain and when not to. Acting later became a space where difference didn't need justification. Michael chose to lean into visibility rather than avoid it. His response to being seen as unusual was acceptance, not defiance. He didn't try to redefine normal, he lived beside it. His story gently connects to something shared. Everyone learns, sooner or later, how much of life is about making peace with the body you're given and finding places where you're allowed to exist comfortably within it. Number 10. Adam Rayner. Sometimes a life defies categories so completely that even doctors struggle to explain it. Adam Rayner was born smaller than average and lived much of his early life with dwarfism. Then, unexpectedly, his body began to grow at an extreme rate. Over time, he became the only known person to live with both dwarfism and gigantism. Daily life shifted constantly as his body changed, bringing pain, mobility issues, and frequent medical care. Relationships were shaped by uncertainty, as even specialists couldn't predict what would happen next. Adam didn't have the luxury of planning far ahead. His response was endurance rather than resistance, learning to live inside a body that never settled. His story gently reminds us that control is often an illusion. Many people live between labels, adapting day by day, doing their best with circumstances that were never chosen or understood. Number 9. Chris Ulmer. Some changes begin not in the body, but in perspective. Chris Ulmer built his life around a simple idea: listening before judging. After spending time with individuals who had cognitive and developmental differences, he realized how often society speaks over them. Daily life for Chris became centered on conversation, patience, and presence. Through shared experiences, he formed deep relationships that challenged his own assumptions about independence and intelligence. Social spaces that once felt distant became places of learning. Chris responded by creating platforms where people could speak for themselves without filters or labels. His resilience shows in consistency, returning again and again to the same respectful approach. Chris's story connects quietly to a shared truth. Understanding doesn't come from expertise alone. It grows when we slow down, ask better questions, and allow people to define themselves in their own time. Number 8. Kelly Knox. Sometimes confidence doesn't come from blending in, but from deciding what feels right early on. Kelly Knox was born without her left forearm and, from a young age, chose not to use a prosthetic. For her, it felt more natural to live in her body as it was. Growing up, that decision shaped how she moved through school, friendships, and public spaces, where curiosity often arrived before understanding. Modeling entered her life unexpectedly and quickly became a platform rather than a performance. Winning a major television modeling competition brought visibility, but it also brought responsibility. Daily life now includes navigating fashion spaces that weren't built with difference in mind. Kelly responds with calm clarity, speaking openly about inclusion without framing herself as an exception. Her resilience lives in consistency, not confrontation. Her story gently reminds us that confidence often grows from self-acceptance, and that representation matters most when it feels honest rather than forced. Number 7. Luca Trapani's parenthood often begins with expectation. For Luca Trapani, it began with conviction. As a single man, he chose to adopt a child with Down syndrome, a decision many questioned openly. Daily life became structured around care, patience, and long-term commitment. Relationships shifted as Luca navigated both support and skepticism from those around him. Instead of responding defensively, he focused on building stability at home. His mindset remained grounded, shaped by routine rather than reaction. Luca speaks about parenting not as sacrifice, but as shared growth. His resilience lives in showing up consistently, even when choices are misunderstood. His story connects back to something deeply human. Love often grows strongest where expectations fall away. Families are not defined by tradition, but by responsibility, care, and the willingness to stay present. Number 6. Claudia Mitchell. Sometimes technology enters a life quietly, not to replace something lost, but to restore a sense of connection. Claudia Mitchell lost her arm in a motorcycle accident as a young woman, an event that reshaped both her body and her future. Recovery wasn't only physical. Daily life became an exercise in relearning balance, independence, and patience. Later, she became one of the first people to use a bionic arm connected directly to her nervous system, allowing her to feel pressure and temperature through the device. That change affected more than movement. It altered how she related to her own body. Relationships adjusted as others learned what the technology could and couldn't do. Claudia approached the experience without spectacle. She spoke about adaptation, not miracle. Her resilience lived in willingness to test, to fail, to try again. Her story gently reflects something shared. Healing often means forming a new relationship with yourself, rather than returning to who you were before. Number 5. Benjamin Kyle. Some lives don't unfold forward, but start again in the middle. Benjamin Kyle was found unconscious behind a restaurant with no memory of who he was or where he came from. Doctors confirmed he had severe retrograde amnesia, leaving him without a personal history to return to. Daily life became a careful reconstruction, built from routines rather than memories. Relationships were especially complex, since trust usually grows from shared pasts he couldn't access. Benjamin learned to form connections slowly, focusing on the present moment instead of what was missing. He didn't dramatize his condition or search for sympathy. His response was patience, accepting uncertainty as part of his reality. Over time, small details helped anchor him, even as his identity remained incomplete. His story gently connects to something familiar. Many people move through life unsure of who they're becoming. Benjamin simply had to begin that process without a beginning. Number 4. Hugh Hare an accident can redraw a life without asking permission. Hugh Hare lost both legs in a climbing accident as a teenager, forcing a sudden redefinition of movement and identity. Recovery wasn't only about learning to walk again, but about reimagining what mobility could mean. Daily life shifted toward experimentation, engineering, and adaptation. Relationships evolved as Hugh moved from patient to innovator, driven by curiosity rather than limitation. He went on to design advanced prosthetics that respond intuitively to the body. Hugh's response to loss wasn't resistance, but reinvention. He doesn't frame disability as something to overcome, but something to work with thoughtfully. His resilience feels practical and forward-looking. Hugh's story connects back to a shared human experience. When something essential is taken away, many people don't just replace it. They rethink what's possible altogether. Number 3. Natasha Demkina. Some experiences are difficult to explain, even to the people living them. Natasha Demkina claims she can see inside the human body, sensing organs and conditions without medical tools. Growing up, this ability set her apart quickly, bringing attention and skepticism in equal measure. Daily life became a balance between curiosity and restraint, knowing when to speak and when to stay quiet. Relationships required trust, especially as others questioned what they couldn't understand. Natasha responded by staying measured rather than defensive. She never demanded belief, only space to describe her experience. Her mindset remained calm, grounded in personal honesty. Whether accepted or doubted, her story highlights something familiar. Many people live with inner experiences that don't translate easily into words, and learning when to share them is often as important as having them. Number 2. Mandy Sellers. Living with a body that changes without warning can make planning feel fragile. Mandy Sellers has a rare condition that causes her legs to grow disproportionately, affecting mobility and daily comfort. Everyday routines involve medical appointments, physical adjustments, and constant recalibration. Social relationships weren't always easy, especially when visibility invited assumptions. Mandy learned to speak openly about her condition while protecting her emotional space. She didn't hide, but she didn't perform either. Her response to ongoing uncertainty was acceptance paired with persistence. She focused on what could be managed today rather than what might happen later. Mandy's resilience lives in realism, not optimism alone. Her story gently echoes a shared truth. Many people wake up each day not knowing how their body will feel. Learning to live well inside that uncertainty takes patience most never see. Number 1. Stelarc. Most people treat the body as something to protect. Stelarc treated it as something to question. A performance artist, he suspended himself from hooks, controlled his muscles with electrical impulses, and even implanted an extra ear onto his arm. His work wasn't about shock for attention, but about asking whether the human body was ever meant to stay the same. Daily life became an extension of experimentation. Technology blended with flesh. Control was shared between machines and muscle memory. Pain wasn't avoided but measured. Reactions from others ranged from fascination to discomfort, often forcing people to confront their own limits. Stelarc didn't resist fear. He examined it. He didn't try to perfect the body. He tried to expose its fragility and adaptability. His life reminds us that progress often begins by asking unsettling questions and having the courage to live inside them. If stories like these hit you, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for hanging with us, and we'll see you soon in the next one.